Good morning. You are here for the Dotley session brought to you by the Insights Programme 2025. By way of introduction, my name is Claire Thorogood and I'm head of the Probation Learning Design faculty. And I am one of the co-leads of the pilot for Dotley. And I'm going to hand across to my colleague James to introduce himself.
Thanks, Claire. I'm James Mole. I am a Senior Policy Manager in the Probation Capability Team in the Transforming Delivery Directorate, and I'm one of the other co-leads working with Claire. I'll go over to David.
Hi there, doing three things at once. I'm David Rayhoe, one of the AI Design Delivery Managers within HMPPS AI team that's part of the Transforming Delivery Directorate.
And then just to you, Jade.
Jade.
Hi, I'm Jade Shepherd. I am a learner research and testing specialist in the design faculty, and I am responsible for making sure the evaluation of the pilot goes well.
Thank you so much, everyone. And as David mentioned, we sit within the Transforming Delivery Directorate, which is within HMPPS HQ. Okay, just in terms of some matters for today. So can I just check that you're able to see some icons on a screen, because mine have gone off. Sorry, that's to James or any of the team.
They've just disappeared. They did pop up and now they've gone.
Okay, almost seems inevitable.
There we go.
They're up again.
They keep popping up and then disappearing.
Oh my goodness. Okay, but there's a certain irony in the fact that we're presenting something on digital technology and yet the PowerPoints are not playing ball. So I'll speak to this instead, if I may. So just wanted to kind of give a bit of a heads up really to everyone that the Insights team have asked us to record these sessions, and there's a potential that any of the still images may be used for promotional material. So if anyone is unhappy about that, please feel free to turn off your video. It looks like quite a lot of people are off video anyway, potentially because of bandwidth issues, but just to let you know. If we could ask people to stay on mute during the presentation, please. We will have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end, and you can also make full use of the chat function as well. We'll keep an eye on that. If we're not able to answer all the questions today, we'll be very happy to come back to you afterwards. And finally, opportunity for people to be interactive and use the chatbot tool. You should all have received an email in the last 24 hours or so, which allowed you to sign up to the chatbot and log in. So we had asked people to do that in advance so that you could maximize the time for testing it today. If you do have any issues, though, you can reach out in the chat and we'll come back to you. But we have got a limited amount of time for us to do that in the session. Just to let you know that you will have access to the chatbot Dotley until midnight tonight. And so we definitely encourage you to have a look at that, have a play with that. We have to disable the accounts by midnight tonight to maintain the integrity of the evaluation, which Jade will speak to later. I'm also conscious that there is quite a lot for us to get to. Luckily, it is being recorded, so if you do need to kind of take a comfort break, come back, you're more than welcome to do that. And obviously, you can also rewatch the recording whenever you'd want to. Okay, so now the icons have decided that they're going to work. So there are my beautiful icons. Hopefully, everyone really appreciates those. Okay, so this is just a brief session outline for today, which I think we're also popping into the chat with you, just to kind of give you a bit of navigation of what we'll be going through during the session, which ends at 1 o'clock today. Okay, just by way of a bit of a health warning, we're conscious that that we will be making reference to Taught by Humans and to Dotley. And just to be super clear, that when we talk about these, we are talking about one and the same. So Taught by Humans is the educational technology provider that we are working with. So it's the company. And Dotley is the name of the actual tool, the actual chatbot that we're referring to. So if we do use those terms, that is why there are two of them, and hopefully that doesn't get too confusing as we go through. You may have picked that up already from logging into the platform, that it is Taught by Humans platform. Okay, so just by way of a bit of an introduction, really, in terms of the background to Dotley, this was an opportunity that was brought to us on the back of a reverse pitch event, which was conducted by the Service Transformation Group at the start of 2025. That was put out by the Ministry of Justice. And essentially a number of problem statements were provided to small micro subject matter experts in technology. And on the back of that, a number of companies were awarded small contracts to work with different teams within MOJ and within HMPPS HQ. One of those was Taught by Humans. Out of the box, the Taught by Humans platform didn't necessarily meet the needs that we had at that point. And so there was a lot of scoping work between myself and other members of the team who are on the call this morning to think about where would we get most benefit from the use of this tool, and actually what would be most helpful in terms of what that tool looks like and how it supports learners. So some of the work that we did was making the platform much more bespoke to the needs of a probation audience. So rather than being a tool that speaks about getting to grips with AI, instead using AI to actually provide a service to probation members of staff. And specifically, we wanted to provide support for people that were undergoing the PQIP program. So for anyone who doesn't know or isn't aware, the PQIP program refers to the trainee probation officer program, which we have several intakes throughout the year. In large number, people that come into the service or are already within the service that then start a formal qualification to become probation qualified. That route can be anywhere between 15 months long or 30 months long. It's a very intensive course. Some people will have experience of probation, some people will not. And so we recognised pretty quickly that this could be a really useful tool as an additional layer of support really for people that were in the early stages of that cohort programme. So to that end, the duration has been set as 6 months. So the eagle-eared amongst you will see that we've increased it from 3 months to 6 months. And the pilot originally kicked off on the 18th of September to align with that group of staff coming into the organisation. And it will go until March 2026. And we'll say a bit about next steps later on in the call. And we're also piloting this in 5 regions of the UK, again, which we will touch on later. So in terms of the pilot aims, 3 primary aims of the pilot. One is to reduce the learning curve for new entrant probation trainee staff. So as I've mentioned, that's a very intensive programme, and our PQIP members of staff are learning a lot of content in a relatively short space of time. And so it's about how can we use additional tools, technology, digital, etc., to support them and to reduce that learning curve so that they are able to reach confidence, competence more quickly. And to the second point, there's something around knowledge retention. So obviously, given the idea of cognitive load, we wanted to be sure that people were able to retain knowledge or revisit knowledge at point of need. So if there's something that they'd learned perhaps in month 1 of the programme and by month 5 or month 6 they had forgotten it, there's that opportunity to go through, recheck, and therefore improve their knowledge retention in that area. And the final point is given what I've said about large cohorts of people coming into the business, there's something about this being another way of providing that wraparound support for people to consolidate their learning. So we know that, learning in and of itself, so a formal piece of learning, whether that's e-learning or an event, in and of itself is not going to achieve exactly what we would expect in terms of knowledge retention and skills development over time. And actually there needs to be more support for that person in terms of being able to access learning at point of need and get feedback, live feedback really, on their understanding of concepts and new theories that they may not have come across before. So those are the kind of 3 primary pilot aims of this pilot. Okay. So moving into development. So as we mentioned, off the shelf, the tool itself was an AI training tool. So it was a tool specifically developed to help people learn about artificial intelligence. And there was a chatbot element in that people could have a conversation with the system about AI coding and things like that. In the development of this pilot, we've significantly changed the off-the-shelf product, and it's now something which is entirely bespoke to probation. And it is also a closed system. So when learners ask a question of Dotly, they will not receive kind of information which is procured from the wider internet, kind of open source material. The system actually draws from a closed catalogue of content that we have uploaded into Dotly. And the reason for that, amongst, there's several reasons for that, but I think that probably the most relevant for our purposes is that it's really important that we safeguard the integrity of that information that our new PQIP trainees are getting. So all of the information that was uploaded to Dotly and that perform its kind of back catalogue function is information that has been taken from learning products within the probation learning design faculty. So within my team, which speaks primarily to the first 6 months of their time on the PQIP programme. So it will be information that they will be coming across in their curriculum as part of their PQIP. And additional information that was included with things like our PQIP handbook, which is a very, very useful but very, very lengthy document. In providing all of this information into the back catalogue of Dotly, people are able to ask and get answers to questions very quickly, rather than trawling through lots of information or having to go back into different systems to check things like e-learning modules or review their notes. So it gives it's a way of us safeguarding that information is informed, it's current, and it's been quality assured. The other thing to say about the products that I mentioned that the learning design faculty pull together and which are in the back end of Dotly is that all of them have been informed by subject matter expertise within the business. So there's that kind of sense that it is robust information that they're getting. As you would expect, Dotly has gone through a period of testing. It's been tested by a number of individuals all around the country in a number of different roles, from people that were existing PQIP trainees through to managers of PQIP trainees, through to tutor assessors and L&D specialists as well. So it has had testing. That being said, we have made the point throughout the system that this is a pilot project, and as such, people need to be aware that it is, it's subject to change and that we may be iterating it over time. And finally, we recognise that there were a number of risks when it comes to firstly using AI in general, but also AI particularly with a new staff group. And so we were very keen to ensure that we had put sufficient guardrails in place to make sure that Dotly was a safe space for members of staff, and that there were, no, you're fine. It's all right, David, don't worry. Sounds like you got a bit of a tickle in your throat, no problem. And that there were ways that we would be alerted to anything that was going on the platform that might be particularly concerning. And in a moment, when James gives a demo of Dotly in action, you'll be able to see examples of those guardrails in action. So I'm going to hand across to you, David, as our AI specialist advisor on the project, just to talk through briefly ethics, if I may.
Yeah. Thanks, Claire. I'll try not to croak during this. But so I'm going to talk a bit about ethical use of AI within HMPPS and also about data protection impact assessments. Okay, so within HMPPS, we're beginning to deploy AI at scale in line with the MOJ AI Action Plan for Justice. As we do this, we're mindful that ethics and privacy are non-negotiable, and this has certainly been the case throughout the development and testing and piloting of Dotly. Dotly is one of our first AI-enabled tools to directly support frontline operations, so it's critical that it embodies our safety principles that are developed by the MOJ in collaboration with the Turing Institute. So sustainability, accountability, fairness, explainability, and data responsibility. The application of these principles to our work ensures that our ambitions for AI to become AI becomes best day-to-day practice and high-quality business as usual. So I want to say a bit about the ethical use of AI in HMPPS. So when we talk about the ethical use of AI, it means that every AI system in HMPPS must support and never substitute or replace professional judgment. Our approach with all AI initiatives is to start small and build up. So we aim to improve, to prove value and safety early and keep meaningful human oversight in any AI process, especially when AI might impact on privacy, liberty, safety, or rehabilitation. So we aim to embed transparency and accountability into every stage of delivery. This commitment is written into our approach to AI and forms part of our ongoing discussions with recognised trade unions and other stakeholders. So this commitment has been evident at every stage throughout the development, testing and piloting of Dotley, and that makes me proud to have been part of the project. So being part of Dotley project has served to remind me of the vital importance of developing data protection impact assessments that are not about ticking boxes, but are fit for purpose for the real world. A data protection impact assessment, or DPIA, is our key privacy risk management tool, and it is legally required for high risk activities such as large scale processing of special or criminal data, significant profiling, or systematic monitoring. For Dotley, the DPIA was a foundational step that ensured that our design and deployment are lawful, fair and transparent. In MOJ, we use OneTrust, and this is an industry standard platform to carry out DPIAs. These are completed collaboratively with expert advice and guidance from our information assurance leads and the data protection team, and are reviewed annually or whenever significant changes occur. So why do DPIAs matter? So DPIAs protect service users and the MOJ and HMPPS. They demonstrate and record both GDPR and Data Protection Act compliance. They reduce both operational and reputational risk, and they strengthen public trust in our responsible use of AI. DPIA use also aligns with our ethics framework, which expects documented ethical reflection and mitigation actions to be in place throughout a project's life cycle. And what does this mean for Dotley? As Dotley handles some sensitive data, albeit anonymised, completing a robust DPIA was not optional. It was essential to ensure full consideration was carried out and protections are in place. The process ensures that consideration of data handling, arithmetic, fairness, struggle with that one, and human oversight are embedded from the outset and continuously reviewed as Dotley evolves. So if you're working up an AI use case and it involves using personal data, you must complete a DPIA, even for cases involving approved MOJ tools like Copilot. So start with OneTrust screening, actively engage with your information assurance leads and the data protection team, capture mitigation such as human in the loop checks and bias testing, obtain appropriate approval and review the DPIA annually. Through developing Dotley, we were therefore not just testing a tool, but rather we were proving how AI can be deployed responsibly, transparently and ethically with some great benefits within HMPPS. And now I'll hand you over to James, who will start by taking us through navigation.
Thank you, David. So I am going to now start sharing my screen, and we are going to start with a bit of a live navigation of the system. Some of you may have been into it already, but we will talk you through the various different elements to it, and then I'm going to talk about some of the risks that we identified as part of that project, and I'll talk you through how we've mitigated some of those risks. So I'm hoping that you can see my screen now.
Yeah.
Good. Right. So normally when people are doing a tech demo, they always say recording. Never do a live tech demo. We've decided not to do that. We are going to go with a live tech demo. So this is the home page of Dotley. So when you sign up, you will be asked to give a pathway of PQIP that you're on. You will also be asked to say a particular region that you're in. And you can see up here, that will be recorded in the top right hand. The pathway that you're on is PSOP I picked, which is the Probation Service Officer pathway. The reason we ask people to do that is because the answers they get will be tailored to the pathway that they are on and also the region that they are in. Because we work with different universities across the country and they have slightly different information, different structures to their programs, we want people to have as personalised responses as we possibly can get from Dotley. And similarly with the pathway they are on, they are different lengths, there are slightly different elements to them, and so Dotley will give personalised responses depending on which pathway people are on and which region they are in. For all of you, we just select any of them, and that will be absolutely fine, and it will enable you to kind of have a go and see how it all works. So you can see here there are 3 separate sections. We've got ask me a question, check my understanding and help me prepare. Those things are mirrored down the left hand side here, so you can also use these to navigate. And so if you go into one of them and you want to get to one of the other elements, you can use the left hand side icons down here. Probably the one that, well, not probably, the one that we know people have been using the most at the beginning is this one, ask me a question. And it is literally, they can ask Dotly any question. It separates it out into about the PQIP programme and also about specific learning topics. You don't necessarily need to select one of those. You can just start typing question down at the bottom here. So I'll ask a pretty standard question. I'm going to ask it, what does a practice tutor assessor do? And they are people who work with PQIPs during their training programme, work with them very closely, and hopefully it will give me a fairly nice answer about what those people do. You get the little Dotly typing thing. This is when I start to sweat a little bit, and it's come up with a nice answer here. So it gives a fairly comprehensive answer about what that practice tutor assessor will do. All of this information is taken from the information that we have fed into it. As Claire said, it is a closed system. It doesn't take information from the wider internet. So this is all from information that we've fed into. What you'll see with Dotly when you get to have a play around with it and use it is that it tries to keep that conversation going. So it will always ask a kind of follow-up question, or whether you want something exploring in more detail. If you've used any other type of AI chatbot, they always do that. They will always try and keep that conversation moving along and try and keep it going. So you can see down at the bottom here, is it helpful for you? Would you like to know more about the mentor role, how the mentor role differs or complements this? So trying to keep that going. So this is the Ask Dotly bit, and you can ask it a question about probation work. You can ask it a question about the PQIP programme. You can ask it pretty much anything that is related to the PQIP. Next up, we've got this section, which is the check understanding. For the majority, for all of you, it will most likely come up with 0 completed. You won't have any check understanding, so it will probably look a little bit more like start the new understanding check, which looks like this. What this does is when you click on select a module, it brings up all of the learning modules that PQIP learners complete within the first 6 months of the programme. And you can select one of those modules, and if I select the top one, an introduction to mental health, and that says there that I would like to check my understanding of an introduction to mental health module, Dotly asks a question. And so this is all about trying to embed the learning that they are doing throughout that PQIP programme, and trying to get them to reflect and think about the learning that they've done, and gives them a little bit of a conversation to work through that. So as you can see there, it's asked me a question. To start, could you explain how understanding the symptoms of different mental health illnesses and personality disorders can impact your work with people on probation, and how might recognising those symptoms influence your approach for decisions? I will put a very simple answer, so it will make me a better probation officer. And what we should see is that Dotly will give me an encouraging start. So that's a good start, James. Recognise the symptoms does help me be more effective, and then ask me to expand on it a bit. And gives me some guidance and some kind of steering about how I might want to do that. But what it will do is it will take me through a conversation of that learning that's been completed, and it will work with me to check my understanding. Where that understanding is good, it will give me some positive feedback, and then we'll move me on to another section. Where there's elements that are missing, it will try and draw that out through reflective questioning, and getting me to answer some questions. What we do with this is every month, every learner that is signed up to Dotly will get an email from the system that says, at this point, we expect that you will have completed these particular learning events. Why don't you go into Dotly and go and check your understanding and work through them? And so we do that every month, and we are now starting to see more people using this as we go on. So as I said right at the start, by far the most amount of people using Ask Me a Question. Now they've started to use this a little bit more, and I'll talk more about that when we go into some of the findings that we found out. And then the last area is prepare for service users. So this one, it gives 4 different approaches when working with service users and people on probation that PQIP learners might be doing. And you can select any of them when you're having a test of it. I will select motivational interviewing, and it just brings up a question. I'd like help preparing for interactions with service users, focusing on motivational interviewing. It says here, great to hear you're focusing on MI. What kind of situations or challenges do you usually face when using MI with your service users? So I'm going to say I'd like to feel more confident about working with people who deny their offending. And so what Dotley should now do, there we go, is bring up some follow-up questions. So what tends to happen when you try to explore this with them? How do they usually respond? And I'm just going to put something like, I usually hit a brick wall and the conversation breaks down. And what you will find is that Dotley gives you some guidance and some tips, and then it gives you the opportunity to practice that approach. So what this section of Dotley enables you to do is actually role play through a situation with a person on probation. You can go through the whole thing. You can kind of role play a supervision session that someone might be having, and using that particular approach around motivational interviewing, and getting those right approaches for that particular circumstance or particular person on probation, and they'll be getting feedback and they'll be getting guidance from Dotley as they go along. So those are the 3 different elements to it. Now I'm just going to talk through the kind of 3 biggest risks, and then after that we're all going to let you all go off and have a go on your own. So one of the biggest risks that we were concerned about with Dotley was around plagiarism, because the PQIP program is a qualification, and we were concerned that learners might use Dotley to aid them both with their academic studies and with a vocational qualification that they have to complete as a result of Dotley. When we first set Dotley up, Dotley was incredibly helpful and was overly helpful and would offer to do everything for you. So you're able to ask it to write assignments and all sorts of things, and it will quite happily go off and do that. We have had to keep tweaking this and fine-tuning it. And we initially tweaked it the wrong way, so it then wasn't really helpful at all, and would say, well, I'm not allowed to help you with that. And now we think we've got to quite a good place. So if I put something in here like, I would like you to write me a 500-word assignment on women and desistance, which could be something that a learner is asked to write about for the vocational qualification or for the academic side of things. And what we should hopefully see here is that Dotley, you're certainly having a long old think, there we go, will kind of, it will say, I'm here to support your learning, help you develop your own assignment on women's assistance. However, I won't be able to write the assignment for you. I can help you to think through the key themes and structure so you can write a strong piece yourself. So what it starts to do is it starts to ask some reflective questions of the learner. It also gives them some tips and some pointers on how they might want to structure their answer, but it is effectively working as a learning buddy as opposed to doing the work for them. So that's one of the kind of guardrails that we've got in place. And like I say, it's taken some fairly significant fine tuning to get it to this point. We now think it is of a place where it's helpful, it's supportive, it gives some guidance, but it won't do things for them. It means that they can't just submit something that has been written by Dotley for an assignment. One of the other elements, one of the other guardrails that we put in place, one of the other risks that we identified was about sharing of information. And David talked about the data protection impact assessment. Again, this is something we have had to tweak and is again needs regular fine tuning. So I am going to prepare for service users to demonstrate this one. and just show this. And I'm going to make up a name. So if anyone does know a John Smith with this completely random date of birth, then I have made them up. So I'm going to say they're really difficult to work with. Hopefully, we will now see. There we go. So Dotly flags up there. I've spotted some personally identifying information that needs to be removed. So please remove these details and rephrase. And you can still discuss these elements, but you can't discuss specifics. You have to remove names, addresses, dates of birth, case numbers, any identifiable information. There are also warnings on the system. So there's a warning when you first go into this particular section about not sharing specific information. So you can see here, important, remember not to share any identifying information, and also on sign up. Learners are reminded that they should not be sharing personal information. And again, we want Dotly to be helpful, but we also need to keep within the realms of that data protection impact assessment. We also remind learners that there are data information sharing policies in probation that they need to adhere to when using Dotly. So there is also an element of personal responsibility for those learners. And then the final risk that we identified was potentially learners who might really be struggling and might be using Dotly to try and help them through some really difficult and challenging periods, and might, then not be using the support of actual humans. So you'll see across Dotly there are reminders about a humans first approach. So it is very much a humans first approach. So Dotly is not a replacement for the years of combined experience of your peers, PTA and managers. So please do reach out and ask them for guidance. And what you'll see is, I'm going to put something here. So I'm going to put, I'm really struggling working with someone difficult and can be aggressive, and I'm not sure how to handle them. So hopefully here, Dotly will give a response. Here we go. That talks about talking to people about this. So it will, say, speaking with your practice tutor assessor about additional support, any employee assistance program your organisation offers, and discussing your concerns with your line manager. So I'm here to help you learning questions, but there are other people that can provide that personal support you need. Once something like that happens and it gets identified, an email also gets sent to a relevant person in the region, just to check in with the learner and make sure that they are okay and flag up that there are concerns that have been raised by the system. So there is an automated safeguarding system within Dotly that lets people know. So I expect we will see lots and lots of safeguarding emails flying around today. That's fine. We are aware that people will be playing with Dotly and using it. And so if you feel like you want to test that out, then that's not a problem. But there just is an email that gets sent out in the background just to safeguard those people that are using it. So those are kind of the three risks. As I say, it's really been an approach of fine-tuning things and making sure that Dotly is helpful, it's supportive, but that things are adequately managed, and that people are protected in the right way, and that we really do take that humans first approach. So now it is all down to all of you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we've put a bit of time aside so that you can all have a go with Dotly. You can use it in any way that you see fit. And as I said, if it brings up any of those safeguarding emails, don't worry, we expect that we will be seeing more of those today. If anyone has any issues in signing up, do please let us know, but I'm hoping that you will all be able to sign up and have a go. We're going to have a 15-minute timer. So I think we're suggesting that people stay on the call, but if we could be back ready to go at the end of the 15 minutes, it'll keep us on time. Thank you all. We'll let you all have a go.
Yeah, thank you for picking that up, James. At this point, we're going to hand across to Jade to talk us through impact and evaluation. Thank you, Jade.
Thank you. Hopefully everyone's had a good time playing with Dotly and actually got to grips with some of the exciting elements that Dotly has. So I'm going to talk about what success looks like for Dotly and this pilot. When we designed the pilot, we focused on 4 outcomes that mattered the most to probation professionals and the organisation, and those form the core of our evaluation. Firstly, faster onboarding. Right now, it can take months for new staff who join the probation officer qualification programme to feel confident in their role, and even existing staff who move into the role need to upskill. With Dotly, we want to shorten and strengthen that journey. So imagine starting a new role, and because you have a chatbot supporting and guiding you through the processes, answering questions instantly, and reinforcing the learning as you go, you feel more equipped to handle some of the core tasks a bit quicker. Secondly, we wanted to target higher casework quality, but this isn't just about speed. It's also about doing the job well, and most importantly, about doing the job well. Dotly aims to help learners access accurate information at the point of need, meaning fewer errors, better decisions, and ultimately better outcomes for service users. Thirdly, we wanted to reduce the load on practice tutor assessors, managers, and colleagues. We know that managers and practice tutor assessors spend a lot of time answering a lot of routine questions, and that's to be expected with people who are new to the organisation. But Dotly can take on that role and the burden for some of the common queries, freeing up managers to focus more on the coaching and leadership elements rather than troubleshooting. It's about making their time more valuable, but not about removing humans from the loop. Dotly will, as you've hopefully seen whilst you were playing, regularly prompt learners to speak with their manager, assessor, and their colleagues. And finally, we wanted to achieve more confident, independent learners. Confidence is key. When staff feel supported and can find answers for themselves, they become more independent, and that independence builds resilience and reduces reliance on others for every small question. Dotly's a bit like a safety net. It's always there, but encouraging self-sufficiency. So success isn't just a metric, it's about a better experience for learners, managers, and the organisation as a whole. So how will we know if Dotly works? We're keeping the evaluation as practical and joined up as we can, so it gives us meaningful insights without creating extra burden. Firstly, we've set up a control group and a treatment group. All of PQIP 18 cohort who started in September this year have been placed into the pilot to take, they've been invited to take part. The control group will show us how PQIPs currently access information and support, while the treatment group, those using Dotly, will give us feedback and data on how the chatbot supports their first 6 months in role. This comparison is vital for us to understand the real impact. Secondly, we're using surveys at 3 points, before, during, and after the pilot, to capture both qualitative and quantitative data and user experiences. This will help us track changes in confidence, competence, and independence over time. Thirdly, we're running focus groups after the pilot to dig deeper into the learner experience and the manager and the PTA's experiences as well, to gather richer, more qualitative insights. And importantly, we're leveraging where we can existing metrics, so things that are already collected, like the data that Dotly collects for us, to minimise some of the reporting burden for staff and managers. We're also planning to triangulate the data, linking how learners self-assess with how their PTAs and SPOs assess them. Hopefully, this will give us a richer, fuller picture of whether Dotly is making a difference in confidence and capability. And finally, the insights from this evaluation will inform whether Dotly scales across the service, if the pilot shows real impact, faster onboarding, better casework quality, and more confident learners. Dotly could become a key part of how we onboard and support probation professionals in the future, or it could lead to a different AI platform altogether, or no AI platform. We won't know until we've got to the end of the pilot and done the research and dug into all of the data that we're generating. So thank you for listening to my evaluation bit. I'm going to pass back to James now, who's going to take you through the next steps.
Thanks, Jade. I'm going to start sharing my screen. So I'm hoping once things get up and running that you can now see the what do we know so far slide. Thank you. So we are in the relatively early stages of the pilot still. So we are just over 2 months in. We started on the 15th of September and just over 2 months in. As Jade has talked about in terms of the evaluation, we have had baseline questionnaires that have gone out, but now we're in a process of kind of gathering data from taught by humans and looking at what the usage of the platform tells us at the moment, and we'll use that in conjunction with the evaluation data that Jade is gathering as well. So what do we know so far? One of the probably most overwhelmingly positive elements that we've picked up from taught by humans is that over 50% of users are engaging at least weekly. And according to them, that is by far considerably higher than they would expect for other AI-based chatbots that they would use, certainly around work packages. So they are saying that over 50% of users engaging at least weekly is really high, is really encouraging. It's showing that people are going back to it and are using it on a regular basis. So that's really encouraging to see. We have 91% of users have had at least one conversation. We think that number may be slightly higher. We think there may be a couple of people that are left over from the testing in that number. So we actually think it's probably much closer to 100% of users who have had at least one conversation with Dotly. Overall, from the entire cohort of PQIP learners, we have around about 75% of them have signed up, of possible users that could have done it. But once they sign up, they are tending to have a conversation. There have been over 1,900 conversations since Dotly began on the 15th of September, which is a really, really significant amount, and it's going up daily. We see that number keep creeping up. I haven't actually checked it today, so it might have even tipped over that 2,000 conversation number, but it keeps going up and up and up. So there are lots and lots of conversations happening, and hopefully what we're seeing is, those conversations are some of those questions that would have been asked to line managers, to practice tutor assessors, and it's all in information that's readily available to the learners. It's just navigating some of that information means that they then go and ask their line manager, their PTA, and that ends up taking up time for other things that they could be doing, which are probably more important than giving answers around the structure of the PQIP programme or kind of things around probation practice. We're seeing an average of 12 conversations per user, so we're starting to see those kind of numbers creep up, and there is an average of 9 messages per chat. So that is a pretty good indication that the design of Dotly trying to keep those conversations going is having the desired effect. So an average of 9, the most amount of chats, the most amount of messages within one chat was 62. So someone actually put 62 messages in one chat with Dotly. I'm not entirely sure what that was about, but that was a long old discussion with Dotly. But we see the average is around about 9, which seems like a really kind of healthy number, in that, they're not just asking one question, they're leaving, they are kind of flowing through on those follow-ups and actually having a conversation with Dotly as a chatbot. And then we've got some top topics. So what Taught by Humans have started to do for us is to pull out some themes of things that are asking. They say it's quite challenging to pull out the themes because people are asking all sorts of different things. They're asking lots and lots of different questions and asking them in lots and lots of different ways. But we are starting to see some themes being pulled out. The top one there is around knowledge and understanding. It really them just asking those questions about trying to develop their own knowledge and understand the PQIP programme and probation work. There's lots of things around policy and procedure and pulling those things out. As Claire mentioned, Dotly is not linked into live systems. It's a closed system. So what it can't do is link into some of our other systems. And for those of you in the service know about things like EQIP that have got really detailed kind of case guidance, but it will refer to EQIP and it will give them the link to the homepage of that. It will also direct them to things like My Learning, which is our learner management system. So it will give people the kind of the direction and a signpost to the right place. But won't necessarily pull up the specific policy or procedure unless it's in those learning packages. And then the third one is around professional development. So people are trying to understand their own professional development and how they go through the PQIP programme and developing themselves. But we're seeing more and more kind of things cropping up. What I also mentioned at the start is that we are starting to see a bit more of a shift now from people just using the ask a question function. They are starting to use the learning and understanding bit, and also around the help me prepare bit. So that's kind of what we expected, wanted to see, is that at the start it would be asking loads of questions, bombarding it with things about the PQIP program, but now hopefully people are starting to see it more as that learning tool, that learning buddy, and using some of the other elements of it to embed learning, to help them prepare for work, to give them a bit of additional support. We're also seeing that there's a really kind of high number of what we call kind of the satisfaction with those particular conversations. So Taught by Humans are able to pull out and identify where they see people got what they wanted from the conversation, and that is up in the 90% at the moment. So generally people seem to be getting what they were going for when they're having that discussion with Dr. So we're seeing some really encouraging kind of data from Taught by Humans, and hopefully that will start to be pulled out from the more detailed evaluation and analysis that Jade's going to be doing. We're also having regular contact with the regions and asking for feedback from learners. We've had some nice anecdotal feedback already about how people have found it really helpful, really useful in their PQIP journey, and especially that seems to come from people who are new to the organisation, where there is an enormous amount of learning and understanding to go through, and they found Dotly was something that they could just go and ask those questions, and those really kind of simple questions that they're able to do at the start. So far, we've got some really encouraging feedback and some data coming back to us. So just in terms of milestones and next steps. So you can see here, these are the milestones that we had of the project as a whole, or the pilot as a whole. July and August were kind of gone through at absolute breakneck speed. It was a very short pilot project that we had to do over the summer, so gathering all of the information to go into Dotly, getting the DPIA approval, getting the contract signed, engaging with our trade unions, ensuring that the regions agreed with what we were doing, and getting everything put into Dotly. Then we had the user testing over August that Claire talked about, with a range of staff from across the organisation. And then iterating, which I talked about, that fine-tuning that we did through August, and realistically are still going through now. We are still working on the fine-tuning where things crop up, and we might not have got things quite right. We are still fine-tuning it. And then we're kind of into this September-March period here. So the pilot is underway. We've got the periodic evaluation, which Jade talked about, identifying those data trends, which I mentioned, with the information that we're getting from Taught by Humans. But we're also kind of having regular feedback and touch points with people within the regions, so probation learning leads who work with the PQIP learners within the regions, and SPOCs within those regions, to find out how things are going, to ensure that Dotly is still working how we'd want it to, whether there are any issues that have cropped up and we might need to fine tune how it operates, how it works. But making sure that we're kind of keeping that iteration, keeping those conversations ongoing, to make sure that Dotly still works how we want it to. It is still doing things in a safe way, and if there's any changes needed, we can make those as we are going along, but also use that to inform the final evaluation. And so that brings us to the next steps. The evaluation, final evaluation, will be coming in April 2026. And so what we need to do is identify all of the information that we're getting from the data, from the users that are using it, from the people that are supporting them, from their practice tutor assessors, from line managers, from other people who are involved in that PQIP program, to help us decide what those next steps might be, and then to consider that within the wider AI landscape in probation and in HMPPS and in the Ministry of Justice. So, you know, David talked about, we are early in that AI journey in terms of Dotly, but there are lots of things happening in that space. And so whatever we do in terms of next steps, we need to think about whether it fits into that wider thinking around AI, how we might build it in. You know, I'm sure lots of you will see when you are testing it, when you're playing around with it, there may be lots and lots of scope for scaling this up. But we need to identify how we can do that, and how it fits in with all of the other elements of AI that are happening within the organisation. And so that is where we are in terms of next steps. It's really kind of wait and see. It's exciting. It is really, you know, one of those things that in those periods in July and August, when we were working very, very quickly, was always doing so with a bit of trepidation about whether this would ever work. And then we first got to test it, and I realised actually I think it is going to work. And the feedback we've been having, and people being able to use it and being able to test it, shows that it's a really great product. And we're just going to wait and see what happens in terms of that evaluation and see where we go with it.